Great. Hi, everyone. Just letting you all know, we are low budget and don't have it in budget for Zoom webinar. So you're currently on the Zoom meeting. Please mute your speaker and turn off your camera if you're not presenting. And if you have a problem with this, you can go to californiaoutdoor.org and click donate, and maybe we will have it in our budget for 2024. Great. Thank you. And for those that are joining on YouTube, thanks for joining later. And if you have any questions, you can email me. And without further ado, I'm really excited. We're launching a new campaign today centered around the future of an Office of Outdoor Recreation in California. This is going to be a webinar series that will continue into 2024. It will also have a roadshow with it, taking it to events throughout California. And I'm really excited to share with you what we're coming up with here on it. For those that don't know me, I'm Lexie Gritlefeld. I'm the Director of California Outdoor Recreation Partnership. I use she, her, they pronouns, and I'm on Northern Paiute Native Lands, the Numu, and Palmadou Toyabe, which is also Mammoth Lakes, California. I like backcountry and alpine skiing, rock climbing, hiking, trail running, you name it, all outdoor sports. And to talk about CORP. So I'm actually coming up on my 4th year with CORP. I've been here 4 years, or I guess 5th year coming into. And I'm really grateful to be with this organization. We have a really down-to-earth board, and it's really cool to work with companies that actually care about the environment and people. And so I'm grateful for this experience. And why we exist as a nonprofit is that California is home to the nation's largest active outdoor industry economy. We just got 2022 BEA numbers back, and California had $73.8 billion in economic spending annually for the outdoor economy, and we contributed 567,636 direct jobs. We believe that we contribute to our health and wellness throughout the state, not just our physical attributes, but also mental health for our state. And we never saw that as more important as during the pandemic. And so we think that this is at the most highest time of importance to have an Office of Outdoor Recreation in California. And so we're moving forward with all of this. Today, sorry, Maribel, somehow that didn't come up right. There we go. So today we've got 4 speakers. To give you a little bit of background, we're in our first of the webinar series, which is OREC 101. So welcome to that. And thanks for being here. We've got Maribel Castañeda from Confluence of States. We've got Doug Houston, our lobbyist from Houston, Magnani and Associates. We've got Carolann Ouellette from the Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation, and Jenny Kordick from Maine Outdoor Brands. Our agenda, you're currently in it. So from 10 to 10:10, we're doing introductions and an overview with me. And then from 10:10 to 10:25, we're going to have an OREC 101 with Maribel. From 10:25 to 10:45, we'll have a history of OREC in California with Doug, and he'll talk about the 3 bills we ran and how that came about. And then from 10:45 to 11, we'll have the relationship between OREC and OBA. And for those that don't know, OREC is the Office of Outdoor Recreation, and OBA is the Outdoor Business Alliance. So California Outdoor Recreation Partnership would be an OBA in this state. So we'll have Carolann and Jenny speak about that and what's going on in Maine with that. And then from 11 to 11:30, we'll open up for a Q&A. So why an OREC? As I mentioned previously, it's an abbreviation for Office of Outdoor Recreation. You'll hear that a lot. We'll use OREC. And an example of using that is, I'm going to call my OREC for help with my guiding permit process, which is something that they could help with. An OREC can bring together a collective voice and leverage each state's unique outdoor recreation economy. Offices can support economic development initiatives and grants, stakeholder outreach, workforce programs, business recruitment, conservation and stewardship projects, youth engagement, equitable access, and more. And we believe that this will help support our mission at CORP as well, because we're a collective voice for the outdoor recreation industry, shaping policy, supporting investments, and engaging a diverse population of outdoor participants around the mental, physical, and community benefits of outdoor recreation. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Maribel to talk about the Office of Outdoor Recreation across the country.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. As Lexie shared, my name is Maribel Castañeda, and I have had the honor to support the Confluence of States as their manager over the past year and a half. I'm a big runner and hiker. I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia and believe we have the best outdoor spaces in the nation, but I'm a little bit biased. My love for public service also led me to this role, working in outdoor recreation and our most fabulous public servants that I think are in state government. So to share a roadmap, I'll provide an overview of the Confluence of States, share who our members are, then dive into why ORECs matter, what they do, how they're created, and share some accomplishments from this past year. So going on to the next slide. What is the Confluence of States? So we are a bipartisan network of 17 state offices of outdoor recreation, developing a national platform to grow outdoor recreation, to grow the outdoor recreation industry, to protect our nation's wild places, and transform conservation into a driver for economic prosperity. Over the past few years, there has been an unprecedented interest in outdoor recreation. The new data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, I know Lexie just shared the California's numbers, but overall in the nation, outdoor recreation generates 1.1 trillion in economic output, accounting for 4.98 million jobs in the nation. From 2021 to 2022, outdoor recreation grew at 4.8%, while the total economic growth was only 1.9%. So we're seeing states really seize the moment by creating offices of outdoor recreation to cultivate economic development opportunities, to improve public health benefits, connect people to the outdoors, and invest in their residents. So adding to that, for a short history, back in 2013, about 10 years ago, Utah was the first state to recognize the significant contribution of outdoor recreation in Utah's economy and created the very first OREC. It wouldn't be until 2 years later when Colorado created their outdoor recreation industry office and Washington created a policy advisor for outdoor recreation and economic development within the Office of the Governor. In 2017, Utah, Colorado, and Washington convened at Outdoor Retailer and had initial discussions about the Confluence of States. The idea was that this would be a unified coalition to provide a central point of contact for the outdoor recreation industry. So in 2018, Denver, Colorado signed the Confluence Accords, finalized the Confluence Accords. The Confluence Accords were finalized in Denver, Colorado, and the 8 states that were originally the signers were Colorado, Montana, North Carolina, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, Washington, and Wyoming. The second signing was in 2019 when Maine, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, and Virginia signed. And then in 2022, post-pandemic, Arkansas, Maryland, and New Hampshire signed later on. So that's when I came on as a staff member. And I'll note that we don't have a signing for this year, but we're looking forward to 2024. So these are our pillars, the Confluence of States pillars. We've got conservation and stewardship, education and workforce training, economic development, and public health and wellness. Each state has signed the Confluence Accords, helping to set a foundation for each office of outdoor recreation, but they can form their office however they'd like. So going on to the next slide. So here are our members. There are currently 17. I will note that those marked in red are states that are currently vacant due to administrative changes or offices that are in transition from departments. The 3 lighter gray states, Arizona, Massachusetts, and Minnesota, are prospective member states or states that are working toward signing the Confluence Accords. They are technically members, they join our meetings, so we wanted to note them on there as well. Going on to the next slide, this doesn't capture the full extent of what is developing in other states. I wanted to note here too, Alabama has formed a council on outdoor recreation to expand, promote, and protect the state's outdoor recreational landscape. Idaho has also created an outdoor recreation fund advisory council to recommend projects to expand outdoor recreation and access to it in Idaho. And then the last slide, or the next slide, you'll also see, well, there's another slide that I had added that will also show you that there are alliances and coalitions like the California Outdoor Recreation Partnership that are working to develop offices. Others include Connecticut Outdoor Recreation Alliance and the Georgia Outdoor Recreation Coalition. So these are all incredible efforts that we've been happy to support as they continue their advocacy in their states. This is a national movement as states are seeing the value and benefits of creating their offices of outdoor recreation. So here's the timeline. 2018 was when we got started. 2019, second signing, third signing in 2022, and then the fourth states will sign sometime next year. So stay tuned. Next slide. So speaking of values, these are a few of our value propositions that we've seen in states. They include supporting small businesses, shared standards for advocacy. States are developing offices to bring this mighty voice to government. Offices provide a coordinated support and impacting policy at the state level. Next slide. So over the past year, we spent quite a while on this value statement, and we think it really captures what our members do. Offices of Outdoor Recreation provide a centralized and dedicated home to coordinate efforts across agencies, identify new opportunities for economic growth, connect all communities to the benefits of time outside, and promote responsible recreation in a state's most treasured places. So other things that our offices work on, they advocate for outdoor recreation, they coordinate natural resources, tourism, and business development departments. They develop outdoor rec policy, improve workforce retention, manage federal funds and grants, expand outdoor access and equity, provide planning and technical assistance, and support economic development strategies. But our offices can't do it alone. Partnership and collaboration is key to their success in partnering with business and industry leaders, nonprofit organizations, local, state, and federal government agencies. Of course, our national partners to the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, Outdoor Industry Association, the National Governors Association's Outdoor Recreation Learning Network, tourism offices, and governors' offices on economic development. When offices are created, a key first step for our directors are to go on a listening tour, build up that directory, and hear what stakeholders have to say and what is important for them. So partnership and collaboration is really sets an office up for success. So how are offices created? Well, it can be through these 4 ways and more. It can be through advisory councils or task forces to learn about the industry, through executive orders where a governor creates one, through legislation, or by the support of outside stakeholders. Stakeholders often create unique state-based coalitions advocating for an office that is the right fit for their state and their state's outdoor recreation industry. We're also seeing models like Minnesota's Outdoor Recreation Partnership. It is an interagency collaboration between Explore Minnesota Tourism, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. So this partnership was formed in the spring of 2023, this past spring, as a direct result of recommendations made by both the Minnesota Outdoor Recreation Task Force and the Governor's Council on Economic Expansion. So Minnesota has really had this evolution to get to where they are currently in this state with their outdoor rec partnership. Pennsylvania also hired their director of outdoor recreation first before establishing an office. So there are many ways that states have developed their offices, many paths. So office accomplishments, ORECs do so much, but in true state government fashion, we don't often celebrate their wins, highlight the good work they're doing, or tell their story in a way that inspires others to work with them or tell legislators to fund them. Many of our offices are staff of one, so marketing and communications, communicating the value of an office isn't a high priority. A big part of my role has been to share the amazing collective work of our states. So from these news headlines, our members are growing tourism, they're investing millions in communities through grant programs they oversee, they're hosting outdoor economy conferences, improving workforce opportunities, creating dedicated funding sources for conservation, all with the goal to get more folks outside. So if you want to learn more, I do encourage you to look at our 2023 outdoor report. It's an overview of the collective work our member states have accomplished for fiscal year 2023. The report highlights each of our 4 pillars, describing efforts across our state offices and their departments. The Outdoor Recreation Roundtable also has a great resource called The Value of State Offices of Outdoor Recreation. It's the resource on the right. So that's also a great list of accomplishments over the past few years. I know they're looking to update that very soon, but I'll drop all of these links in the chat to you after I'm done. If you also want to learn how offices are developed after they're created, we created a guidebook on developing offices of outdoor recreation, and I'll also share that. It's a great insider resource that's sourced from our members to share best practices for setting up an office up for success. So to end, I wanted to share what we do as a network, a few of our member benefits. So we do hold monthly meetings to share common challenges and solutions. We continue to expand our reach, working with incredible partners like the Society of Outdoor Recreation Professionals, the Outdoor Writers Association of America, and many more. And of course, we work very closely with our funders, Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, Outdoor Industry Association, REI, and the VF Foundation. Outdoor recreation is a bipartisan issue, and the Confluence of States is an example of this bipartisanship at work. So here's my contact information. I'll be sure to, everybody, be sure to follow the Confluence of States on LinkedIn for news updates. I'll share that link below as well. And thank you all for having me. Happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thanks, Maribel. Next up, we have Doug Houston from Houston, Magnani and Associates.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon to some, perhaps. My name's Doug Houston. I'm a legislative advocate here in Sacramento. My stable of clients consists primarily, it's about 15 plus folks that I represent within California, really in the outdoor space. I'm an avid hiker, a mountain biker. And last year, I was crowned, not to brag, but the #1 Masters gravel cyclist in Northern California. So I spent a fair amount of time in the outdoors. So Lexie asked me to talk about the history and the evolution in the formation of an OREC here in California. And full disclosure, I was at best a C student in history, so things are going to be a little bit murky, so bear with me as I go through these slides, but go ahead and proceed, Lexie. Thank you. There we go. So back in, I think it was 2009, 2010, I was inspired by the state of Oregon had just advanced legislation around a scenic bikeways program. I think it was 2009. And I sort of took my cue in trying to do something here in California and advanced a bill, AB 1464, which created a program within Caltrans called the California Bike Routes of Significance program. through the course of that bill, and it actually was, at the end of the day, it was signed into law, notwithstanding the fact that we really didn't have any money. I think that was a challenge in trying to implement the law. I mean, there was this nagging question: is where was the industry? Where is the industry? Where's the bike community? I mean, I probably got a handful of support letters in moving this legislation forward, and it got me thinking, obviously. So, you know, things languished to a degree, and then I started to hear that there was a movement on the national level around the formation of these offices, of course, starting with Utah, Colorado, and Washington. And it led me to some further discussions. And that one of the primary discussions was with a gentleman by the name of Jim Branham, who was the executive director of the Sierra Nevada Conservancy here in the state. And the Sierra Nevada Conservancy had a really unique charter and mission, different than other conservancies, and we have 10 of those in our state. And that really is sort of a heightened focus around economic development in rural California and Sierra in particular, and then recreation, which led to a conversation with Dana Stroud. And Dana is now with GoBiz here in the state of California, but at the time she was a program officer for the Sierra Nevada Conservancy in the Eastern Sierra. And she had these connections with a handful of individuals, including Kenji on the phone, Kenji and Kevin, that ultimately led to a conversation with Luis, who was at the time with the Office of Outdoor Recreation in Colorado, that helped me sort of frame the issue in moving something forward here in the state of California. Of course, the added impetus is the Outdoor Recreation Jobs and Economic Impact Act, which led sort of to the segmenting of GDP for recreation in the outdoors. So I approached then chair of the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee, Eduardo Garcia, and he consented to introduce AB 907. It stalled out, and we didn't receive a single negative or no vote. It stalled out primarily because at the time, Assemblymember Garcia, and I was working with him on this, was trying to advance a parks and resources fund in the state of California. And that was AB 18, which ultimately led to Proposition 68 in 2018. And when you're advancing a lot of legislation, big legislation, and this would fall into that category, you got to pick and choose as you're going through fiscal committees. And obviously his bond was a priority, and it was a priority of his caucuses. So he elected during the course of the discussion to resume the effort the following year. So next slide, Lexie, thanks. So we reintroduced the office, and that was in AB 1919. So, you know, it elevated the awareness, sort of provided a call to action to folks out there, and it began to build a little bit of mass. Had some conversations then with Matt Lyon, Kate Hawkins, both with, you know, leaders in the industry, and which led to more conversations, the Outdoor Industry Association, and Kaylin in particular, who, as you all well know, was a former OREC ED at Oregon. And I believe, and I could be mistaken, but I think at that time, concurrent with all these activities, Corp was beginning its formation, and they initiated their 501c6 filings. The bill advanced with no votes, and regrettably, the governor vetoed it. And we learned subsequently, and Lexie knows this all too well, that there was an organization that wasn't crazy about forming up something at the state level because they were doing something at the MGO level. So, and they had a considerable amount of influence over the administration and the Natural Resources Agency in particular. So, and for those of you who are not familiar with Governor Jerry Brown, even though he's a Democrat and progressive Democrat in a lot of ways, he's a fiscal conservative, and I don't know if we fully articulated the value of the office. So regrettably, we got a veto again. sadly. Next slide. So rather than going back to the well, talking to Eduardo, he worked with me in recruiting and enlisting Laura Friedman, who was chair of Assembly Natural Resources. And this was really the first true underwritten effort by the industry to advance something. I brought on additional help in Tracy Berardo, who is a strong voice in the outdoors here in California. And we thought that given that we had a new governor, that possibly, and a new Secretary of Resources in Wade Crowfoot, we thought maybe their prospects would be good in trying to advance this and would be embraced by the administration. You know, I know that Maribel had mentioned, or I'm sorry, it was Lexie mentioned that just how big we are in California, how much we spend, but I've done my own statistical analysis, and we're outspent on a per capita basis by a number of states, and everybody knows that. And one of those states, which might be a really good messaging point, is in fact Florida. I know that folks may or may not have tuned into a recent debate between our governor and Florida's governor. So this might be a nice way to frame the issue moving forward. But again, some of our challenges, or at least the challenges at the time, where the Secretary Crowfoot was pretty well aligned with the organization, the NGO that really torpedoed our efforts the previous year. And another challenge, which I was not aware of, it's that the author, Laura Friedman, sort of has been consistently at odds with the chair of the fiscal committee, Senator Portantino. And that friction remains today, as both of them are going toe-to-toe to replace Adam Schiff in his congressional seat down there. So all the planets weren't exactly in alignment. And again, it stalled in Senate appropriations. And here we are once again, looking for an alternative and trying to move something forward within the state of California. Next. So coincidentally, full circle, Dana Stroud, who was again previously with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, now with GoBiz, had by chance at some sort of conference bumped into a person named Glenda Hummister, I believe that's her name, and she is the executive at the UC Co-op, partnership co-op. They have a division within the co-op, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension, and there is extreme interest out of her shop in working with GoBiz, partnering with GoBiz, maybe with California Natural Resources Agency, to actually tilt up an institute. Again, it's not through legislation necessarily. It's not through an executive order. The good news is that Glenda has indicated she has funding for a position or two within the co-op or the extension to tilt up this institution that can really focus in on the outdoors within the state of California, and primarily really the rural outdoors. And again, if we can get buy-in, and evidently Dana with her office within GoBiz, she has got the green light to work hand in hand with Glenda on trying to, again, tilt up this institution. And really what's provided added impetus is the governor's recently convened through Wade Crowfoot, our Natural Resources Secretary, a wildfire task force, and it has an advisory group within it on sustainable outdoor recreation. And they've come up with a host of findings. And so that those could really lead, those provided some, there are going to be some good talking points as we begin to explore the opportunities in the context of this institute. And again, while it doesn't need to be codified, this really can happen in an organic way and just come to being. I would like to take the opportunity to run some legislation to codify the institute that might ultimately become an office. So stay tuned on that front. And then my last slide, just something to be aware of here in the state of California. In light of our budget challenges, the governor has made it really clear that he wants to continue to invest in climate and resources in the state of California. He's going to have to make some difficult decisions. There's one-time money that's probably going to need to be expunged that would have been dedicated to climate and resources. So in lieu of that, there are two separate climate bond resources bonds, an assembly version and a Senate version moving forward that might give the governor the opportunity to shed some of his general fund commitments into a debt instrument in a bond. And we were moving this, advancing it last year per the governor's request, but sort of halfway around August, the governor decided he wanted to be hyper-focused on his mental health bond. He didn't want to crowd out the March ballot, so stalled to a degree, but I just wanted, for the purposes of this group, bring up just a couple items. So yes, there is in the bond, in that I'm helping to frame the bond, draft the bond, there is money that would be available for the creation of the new office, OREC office here in the state of California. There's money for trails, sizable amount of money for trails, obviously. There's $1 billion plus for urban areas to address park deserts within the state of California, again, in the urban areas. And there's a set aside within that $1 billion to heal and sort of convert distressed lands, brownfields, in our urban areas to green spaces. And again, to the extent that I'm working on the framing of this bond, at least the assembly version, littered throughout the language are opportunities to improve access on our lands, the state of California. So I'm looking for support, not just from Corp, but from individual entities throughout the state to try to advance this and move it forward in the coming year. So I think that's all I have to say for now, and I'm looking forward to answering questions at the end of our presentations.
Great, thanks, Doug. And now we'll turn it over to Carolann and Jenny.
Thanks, Lexie. Good morning, everyone. Quick introductions. Thank you so much to Lexie and Corb for inviting us to present this morning. And I'm Carolann Ouellette. I'm the director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation in Maine, the only director to date. So I've held the position since we started. And Jenny.
Hey there, and I am Jenny Kordick. I am Executive Director of Maine Outdoor Brands, which is I suppose the Corp equivalent in Maine. So we're the Outdoor Business Alliance in the state of Maine.
And next slide, please, Lexie. So just a really quick timeline for how we have gotten going in Maine. And it was actually a quick timeline, and it was at the outdoor retailer where the first 8 states signed the Confluence of Cords that spurred a number of brands to get together back in Maine. Well, actually a little bit out there on a bar napkin, but to come back together in Maine and work very rapidly to create Maine Outdoor Brands. So that was 2017. They moved instantly into working with the Department of Economic and Community Development and the governor's office at the time to advocate for the creation of the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So I was created not even a year later. And it wasn't actually the creation of the office. I was hired in a limited period position to get an office off the ground. The office was officially created as part of a line item in the next governor's budget. So I crossed administrations in that time. In 2019, which is when we also signed the Confluence Accords. So Maine Outdoor Brands, right in that same time, hired Jenny. So Jenny and I basically started pretty much at the same time. So with 2 one-person offices, the idea was that if we aligned our work from the beginning, we'd better leverage our resources. It would also expand our collective capacity, which was really important. So we were fortunate. We were the 10th office to be created and staffed. Next slide.
So I'll just share a little bit about Maine Outdoor Brands, kind of where we've been and how we're structured now. And you can go on to the next slide. But really, you know, we do feel like we work hand in hand with our Office of Outdoor Recreation, and our mission is really to help outdoor businesses and entrepreneurs thrive in the state of Maine. We provide collaborative marketing, networking, resource sharing, education, and advocacy. We are a 501c6 organization as well. We started, I think our initial group of companies, you know, was a dozen or so, and Carolann mentioned it was outdoor retailer, and the brands kind of recognizing that when they oftentimes got together, but it was only at these industry trade shows and wasn't back in Maine, right? And so they, at that show in Utah, kind of came up with the idea of let's actually go back to Maine, start to get together, start to network. At the time, other states had started forming offices and said, you know, we know that outdoor recreation is a huge piece of Maine's economy. We should have an office here as well. So that became one of the first kind of organizing vehicles for MOB. And then that group of companies was successful in forming the office. We do, at this point now, we have 180 or so members. It's product, service, and retail. Still, I think pretty the biggest chunk is the product manufacturers. LB and Old Town Canoe are some of our biggest members, but we also have a number of service providers, from sporting camps to ski resorts to guides and outfitters, as well as nonprofits that are all helping facilitate outdoor recreation experiences in some way. It feels kind of funny to talk about our huge outdoor recreation economy as $3.3 billion in Maine, after Lexie just went through the significance in California, but it is significant for us because it is such a big piece of our state's economy. We're 6th in the country in the value that outdoor recreation adds. So that is one of the things that we have highlighted and have really worked to strengthen, again, in partnership with the office here in Maine. And next slide.
So to Jenny's point, and I was going to mention the same thing after seeing Lexie's numbers, but it is really important. We believe that our partnership and the fact that we've worked together through this public-private collaboration has really helped to grow the outdoor recreation economy in Maine. And we've seen steady growth. We've seen growth in the outdoor recreation industry itself as faster growth than the overall state economy. We saw 16.5% growth, 21 to 22, added 2,300 jobs, which is a big deal for us after looking again at Lexie's job numbers. But, you know, we're 5% of Maine's employment, 3.9% of Maine's GDP. So, you know, again, doing this together has been very advantageous. Next slide, please. So as Jenny mentioned, that MOB really has brought together the private sector in the for-profit and nonprofit space. The Office of Outdoor Recreation has really focused initially on not necessarily breaking down silos, because we're small here and public agencies, state agencies work fairly well together, but it's really been working across agencies to advance the work around growing the outdoor recreation economy. And for our office, really looking at building awareness. So that's been very important to us. As you can see, the 4 bullets here very closely align, if not exactly align, with the Confluence Accord pillars. That was really important to us in the development of the office. So again, working with economic development leaders to integrate outdoor recreation into their efforts, whether that's rural economic development and looking at infrastructure and assets, or whether it's actually business attraction and workforce attraction in the industry itself, facilitation and coordination of outdoor recreation marketing and research. That's more across the public sector space with our partner agencies, looking at the promotion of health and active lifestyles, the health benefits by being active. And then really it's this connector convener role that we play as a one-person office, although I'm happy to say I have a second person that came on board just last month. So that's been really helpful. But it's really that central point of contact and connecting the industry to the resources that they need to grow. And I think for here, where we've focused our collaboration initially was in domestic trade, workforce development, education and professional development, and this whole notion of building awareness and advocacy. So one of the first successes for us was creating this Maine branded exhibit that we started first using at outdoor retailer summer and winter shows. This enabled us to bring multiple brands under one banner, and particularly those small and emerging companies, and introduce them into the broader marketplace. We've since added shows. This has been very exciting. We don't know whether this is a direct result, but a new domestic trade program that was created at the Department of Economic and Community Development with ARPA funds actually included outdoor recreation as one of their 11 targeted sectors. So we've been able to access some really important market research and industry analyses as a result of that, and they're will be eligible for a grant program that has recently launched. Next slide, please.
So another area that we partner on is advocacy and awareness. We've really been focused on the awareness piece, I would say, especially with the BEA starting to measure the impact of the industry. Have been doing a lot the past few years around just media organizing, education, to talk about the significance of the outdoor industry and our economic impact in the state of Maine. We have done a number of briefings with our state legislature and others in the administration. We have a big, it's called the Hall of Flags event in Maine, which is an area in our state house where we we parked the Beaten Bootmobile out front and had tents set up and had products on display and brands there kind of talking about what they do and meeting with legislators. So a lot of education and awareness on those pieces. We have had some select policy engagement as well. We've been organizing on the mob side in particular around a $30 million trails bond. And then an area that I know you in California have been engaged in is PFAS. We've also been working on that here in Maine through the legislature and our Department of Environmental Protection, and acting as a source of information from the industry side, as well as decision makers who are working on those efforts. So this is a big, a big piece for us, and have been definitely collaborating with the office to get the word out and get information out to the industry.
So one of our other successes, and Maribel referenced states working and building and developing outdoor economy summits and conferences. So Jenny and I partnered. We felt it was really important, rather than each of us developing our own. We felt it was really, again, showing the collaboration and partnership and bringing everyone together at one event a year. We launched last year with about 270 attendees. This past year, which was just a few weeks ago, we had over 350 attendees. And I would say we plan this together, but we have an expanded planning team that includes folks from Maine Trails Coalition, some of our conservation organizations as well. We've got folks from the Maine Marine Trades Association. So it kind of covers sort of different sectors of the industry, so that we're really bringing a broad perspective to the content of this event. And I say the big piece here, particularly in year one, and even as much in year two, is that the attendees commented that this was the first time they felt they were in a place with so many different perspectives together in one room around outdoor recreation. So we've been able, at least in years 1 and 2, to convene folks all the way across from the natural resources piece of outdoor recreation. For us in Maine, private landowners, that's a critical part of our access in our outdoor recreation. And then all the way out to private industry, for-profit, private industry, nonprofit, a lot of the public sector agencies, economic development, leaders throughout the state and educational leaders, whether it's at the high school level or the post-secondary level and more. So that for us has been really a place to gather a lot of information, get people connected that may not have been connected previously, but had been working on some of them the same issues, but some of them projects that were very interrelated and needed that partnership to advance the work that they had at hand. So this is, again, a really exciting piece for us. And at this year's, we actually started on some visioning sessions for a 10-year planning process, which we'll get into just in a moment. Next slide, please.
Another area that we've been focusing on and working together on is talent attraction and retention. So kind of this workforce development bucket, that's also a key priority for the Confluence. From the business side, you know, when we asked our members what's holding you back, what are some of your barriers to growth, workforce has come up time and time again. And so we've really looked to figure out kind of what's our role from the business alliance side and working in partnership with the state office to start to address this issue. So we worked collaboratively to do a workforce demand assessment of the industry to identify some of the jobs that employers thought they would be hiring for in the next 5 years, and what some gaps were, what challenges were. We've been able to use that to build stronger relationships with our educational partners from the college and university system in particular, and look at, you know, are the current programs and that are being offered in Maine now on track to meet industry demand? How can we strengthen those and work to just really improve that pipeline from the education track into the industry? We've also been, you know, we partnered with Basecamp Outdoors at our summit last year to do a kind of broader career exposure and hiring event. And so really, I think have worked to get the word out about how great Maine is as a place to live and work in this industry, and the variety of opportunities that exist in the outdoor industry in the state of Maine. From the actual careers we could, you know, be working outside as a guide or outfitter, or as a land manager, to working in marketing and design and engineering, and more on the business side as well. So this is an area that we have definitely seen a huge need for and have worked to fill the gap, and certainly more work to do. If you go on to the next slide, we did have one great success this past year where we actually had a new program start in Maine, kind of as a result of that, of them seeing, you know, this outdoor industry forming and the significance of the economic impact in the state, and also recognizing the need from the employer side. So the University of New England just started an outdoor business and innovation program, and both MOB and Carolann's office are advisors to the program. So we've been helping kind of shape and promote that effort, and are going to be working to kind of better place and connect students into the industry. So a couple of them came to our summit a couple of weeks ago and had some really great contributions, and we're excited about that program and partnership. And I think it is a result of our work together, specifically looking at this workforce pipeline. Next slide.
And so just one of our last pieces, and I think the 5 years have definitely led up to the moment we're in now, and looking 10 years out with this outdoor economy roadmap process. But we recognize that really we're at a point where we can better leverage that outdoor heritage, and what we're seeing is a true culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, and obviously the growing interest. And part of this was as a way to support recovery in the communities and create jobs, but really to further elevate our outdoor recreation economy, keep Maine competitive in this space. So I was actually fortunate to be able to secure some of the funding from the EDA Travel, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation State Grant Program. And so using that, I was able to partner with the University of Maine system and Maine Outdoor Brands to move this initiative forward, and really looking at that core of the EDA Travel, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation Grants purpose is to create more equitable, competitive, and resilient industries. So we're really excited to have that partnership. Our core team is actually more expanded than just the University of Maine, Maine Outdoor Brands, and ourselves, and we're in the process of continuing to fill out a steering committee that will lead the initiative, but we did start with some visioning sessions at the conference. And Jenny, I know you were going to go through some of the goals.
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this project is because when I started in 2019, Carolann had just started in her role, and I think we were both kind of tasked with this big charge to grow and strengthen Maine's outdoor recreation economy. And we have kind of asked ourselves the question, okay, how do we do that? Like, what is going to be the most impactful things for us to do and focus on? And we have seen other industries in Maine be successful at really kind of taking stock of where they're at and looking ahead and saying, where do we want to go? What's the investment that we need? And then taking those plans to the legislature, to the administration, to the industry themselves, and really working together to find solutions to help grow the industry across different areas, from entrepreneurship to supply chain to workforce to other infrastructure. So for example, in Maine, the big industries we have are the forest products industry, the seafood industry. We have a big offshore wind component. So some of these other industries have started doing their own roadmaps. And we just felt the need for us, with the outdoor industry being such a significant industry in the state, to do the same. And our goals for this effort, we want to just take stock of where we're at, establish a baseline for the value of the outdoor rec economy to the state of Maine. We're going to work to define Maine's outdoor recreation economy and its potential. We still get a lot of questions around, like, what is this thing? Like, who's included? What's the impact? And so we recognize the need for some, continued kind of branding and storytelling around that. The third is to identify key strategies and investment needed. So this would be, kind of the big ticket, like what do we need to do? What's it going to take to get there? Looking ahead 10 years. And the fourth piece is just, we don't want to create something that is going to be a report that sits on a shelf. We want to have something that we're going to be able to use and implement. And a key piece of that is just forming the partnerships and collaborations necessary. And I would say we have a really strong base now, but because of the partnership that Maine Outdoor Brands and the Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation has had, and it's one that we want to continue to grow and fold others in as well. So the university kind of coming to the table has been pretty big for us with this project in particular. So those are the goals. We do have a website we can throw in the chat that we just got put up. We had 130 people at our first industry visioning session, and our goal is to have a plan by next fall so that we can look to our next legislative session in particular in 2025 to identify some key areas for investment going forward. So that's I think that's it. That's all we have. We're happy to answer questions. Individually, here's our contact information as well.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. There we go. Sorry. Had trouble pinning everyone. All right, so now we'll go into Q&A, and I have a few questions I'll start off with. And I just want to thank all of you for your time. I think you helped me prove my point that California needs an Office of Outdoor Recreation, so thanks for thoroughly doing that. Yeah, and I will say, although, you know, Maine, it's like 3.3 billion, I think half of that's probably LL Bean. And it's like you're small, but you're mighty. And although it's 4 to 5% of what California's outdoor economy is, and we don't have that kind of representation here. So you're helping me prove my point. Thank you. First, I'll start off with Maribel. I want to know, what kind of contact have you had with California's government officials? Has there been interest in joining the Confluence?
Yeah, it's been minimal. I think individually, some of our members are in constant or in contact with Catherine Toy. But that is, I think, one of the only members from the state that we've been in contact with. We've invited her to a couple of our convenings, just as, you know, somebody that's a part of the Outdoor Recreation Learning Network for the National Governors Association. So we do see her on those meetings as well, but Catherine would be our point of contact that we've had.
Yeah, and she has expressed interest to me. And just for everyone that doesn't know, Catherine Toy is our Deputy Secretary for Access at California Natural Resources Agency. She was appointed in January 2022. So it's been a recent new appointment that we've had, which is really exciting. We've done some great work with her. She just came out with a huge strategy plan for equitable access in the state. And she expressed to me that she wanted to go to the Confluence meeting, but it was taking place in a state where government officials in California are not allowed to travel to because we don't agree with their politics. I think there's 14 states on that list, unfortunately. But that is why. My next question is for Doug. Doug, we ran the bill 3 times, I believe, right? Unofficially and officially, as Corp. And do you remember where each of the Office of Outdoor Recreation were housed in those bills? Or it doesn't have to be exact, but because I know there's different places we could put it: California Natural Resources Agency, GoBiz, etc.
Yeah, as I like to say, under the definition of insanity, you know, moving something forward, expecting a different outcome. So I think we did, if I'm not mistaken, maybe housed it initially in state parks, thinking that was the most logical place for it. But ultimately, I think it was going to reside in California Natural Resources Agency. Sort of, I think, akin to like Catherine's position. You know, something that was going to speak to access and obviously the outdoor industry. So don't quote me. I'd have to go back and do the research, but I believe it was the agency and not the department ultimately.
Great. Jenny, as you know, I tried to pick your brain on how Maine Outdoor Brands gets funding. And I'm enamored with how you fundraise. I think you do a great job. But I do see a great relationship between you and the OREC. And I want to know about grant opportunities that have come out of the OREC that have helped and through your partnership.
Yeah, and Carolann can speak to this as well, but we do have a contract with the state. So some of our like trade show work, for example, is through that. And there has been a number of other grants that have come up that we've been able to apply for from Maine Technology Institute around supporting entrepreneurs was an area. And I think, again, it builds upon the work that we've done with Office of Outdoor Recreation. And then we're looking at this domestic trade grant as well. So some of the grant areas, we've had a lot come out from the pandemic with ARPA funding, but really looking at the economic development side of the industry. We are a 501c6, so we are limited from a lot of kind of philanthropic donations there, as you well know, Lexie, and then rely on our membership dues and supporter dues as well. We are a business trade association, and so that's the biggest source for us is having our members support our work. And also that's, you know, one of the most important pieces for us. We want to be relevant to our members, and so are, you know, member driven, member led, and are really taking our cues from them in terms of where the focus is, which is why we have been engaging on a lot of the workforce and marketing and kind of broader trade efforts.
And Lexie, I'll just jump in quickly because Jenny noted, you know, very specifically that it's a contract for a scope of services versus a grant from our office. Simply looking at the 4 areas of focus for us, again, to that early discussion of the only way I could move some of that forward was to tap into Maine Outdoor Brands, their board, their broader ability to have people on the ground. So, you know, those have include professional development, like the trends talks that MOB holds. It also has included the workforce study, things like that. It's included an inventory of the educational programs across the various community colleges and universities. So it's had very specific elements and deliverables as part of that arrangement. It's worked really well to help advance the work.
Yeah, and I think it does an awesome job. I remember I think it was Outdoor Retailer, January 2020. You had an amazing booth, and like smaller brands were able to come in and showcase their products at it. And it also served as like travel and tourism for Maine as well. And so I thought that was really unique. And that's when I first was like, whoa, Maine's doing something really cool. How can we do that? So yeah, thanks for all your work on that. Carolann, what problems do you think Maine would see without an Office of Outdoor Recreation?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I may have to ponder that when we have more time for, but I will say just briefly on my history. So I came out of private sector, was at the Office of Tourism director for a number of years. And in 2015, actually tried to convene some people to get an office off the ground with no luck whatsoever, because I didn't have enough support or enough of the right people in the room. So having left there and then been brought back again to state government, I would say, to answer your question, I don't think we would have anywhere near the awareness of what there is in Maine. I think we've been very certainly understand that LL Bean has been a part of our history and heritage for a very long time and is a big force when it comes to representing outdoor recreation. And we've been sort of more traditional in understanding the history and heritage of guiding and outfitting. I mean, Maine was the first state to have a registered Maine Guide program, but it was limited. So the scope and scale at which we're at now and understanding how many products are manufactured here and the focus on entrepreneurship and innovation and the opportunity to leverage outdoor recreation as a way to grow local economies that may or may not include visitation, right? There's a really big opportunity there. And then since the pandemic, there's certainly research well ahead of that, but since the pandemic, just this focus on getting kids into the outdoors, for getting anyone into the outdoors for the mental and physical health benefits, but also this whole notion of outdoor learning and bringing classrooms into the outdoors. So I think it's just helped move a lot of that along that may or may not have been as nascent prior to sort of this whole piece coming into play.
Can I pile on to that too? So I think the one of the other, in addition to, completely agree with all of that, Carolann, especially just the identity of the industry and really elevation of the industry within the state, like having an office within economic and community development. I think it kind of sends a signal to others in the state that, like, yeah, this is an industry that is one that is a thing and should be invested in. So it's really helped kind of drive our awareness, relevance, and credibility, I would say, in Maine. And then the other piece was just through the pandemic, it was crucial to have the Office of Outdoor Rec to help the business community. I mean, there was so many questions at the time, like information coming out. And I think that it provided us kind of direct access and somebody within state government that could help navigate things. You know, maybe didn't always have the answers, but could help navigate a time that was really, you know, really tricky, and that lasted for a couple of years. I mean, just we had a number of brands that responded with making PPE and kind of shifting manufacturing, and then we had a huge spike in people getting outdoors and had to do a lot of awareness of like being safe outside. And there was, I think that to me, like just going through the pandemic, I have a hard time kind of even thinking about how we would have navigated that without the Office of Outdoor Recreation.
It was hard. It was me. I'm just kidding. I'll put a note in for everyone that wants to ask a question. You can put it in the chat. If you don't want your name, you can tell me you want it to be anonymous and direct message me. You're welcome to also come on camera and ask it directly if you'd like. We do have a next question. It's actually from one of our board members, Jeff Turner from Kokatat. He says, for Maine, are you seeing participation from the state tourism agency?
I guess I can answer that as a former tourism director. So technically, by statute, we're actually a division of the Office of Tourism, which is inside the Department of Economic and Community Development. That's how the line went into the budget. The tourism director here was my marketing director. We have a really strong relationship, and you know, certainly compare notes, and when we need to be in the room together, we make sure that we are. But there's, to Jenny's point, you know, some of the things that I'm doing are not necessarily tourism related, and some of the things Steve gets asked to do end up being more outdoor, very outdoor rec specific. So we just go back and forth when we need to. And the second person that just came on board for me is really going to be a true conduit. He's attending their weekly staff meetings and making that connection even stronger. So yeah, it's an important piece, because still a lot of that GDP is from trip expenditures and meals and lodging. So it all works together well.
That's great. And just to clarify, you have 2 full-time staff members in your OREC, right?
Yes, me and Jeff.
Yeah, and that's new, right? The second? No?
Yeah, Jeff came on board November 6th, so
that's really
exciting. Very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope we can see that here too someday.
Yeah, and I will say the funding, so we're funded in the New England states from the Northern Border Regional Commission, which is a regional federally designated economic development district.
Doug, are you still there? We have a policy question for you.
Here.
Yeah, I think you may have seen it. But Jack Haskell from Pacific Crest Trail Association is asking, can you tell us more about the $65 million for trails and Trails Conservancy in AB 1567?
I thought I replied, but maybe not. Sure. So as a huge trails advocate and being in sort of the catbird seat and helping to draft the bond, I wanted to make sure, similar to Prop 68, we had incorporated about $30 million into that bond, hoping to almost double that. It's bifurcated $40 million to the Greenways and Trails program, which is an existing program through the California Natural Resources Agency, and then $25 million to both stand up a new conservancy and then provide them with resources to underwrite projects and policies in the space. I would imagine that the conservancy and the formation of the conservancy would need to have enabling legislation to really be fleshed out. But that's my thinking around it.
Awesome. Thank you. Always go to Doug with our policy questions. He's been great to us over the years. Our next question is from the Mammoth Lakes Office of Outdoor Recreation. And I want to put a note in that my town I live in, we have an Office of Outdoor Recreation on the town level. So really cool. But yeah, the question is, how do you envision interaction with the federal land management agencies from a state level office of outdoor recreation. We have lots of public land in California, and for us specifically in Mammoth, an island surrounded by public land. I don't know if anyone wants to take that on. Do you currently collaborate, Carolann, with public lands in Maine?
So Maine, quite honestly, has very little federal public land. 90% of the land on which we recreate is privately owned, which is fairly unusual because it's primarily, a lot of it's, large forest products industry tracts, but there's also a lot of land trusts that manage smaller pieces. I don't actually interact. Maribel, maybe just you've got some learnings from some of the other states that do have large. I would say the only kind of context I've done a little bit with the U.S. Forest Service, because we have just a sliver of the White Mountains. So I know who the contact is. And then Acadia National Park is probably our biggest, along with the newest Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. And there I just connect with staff or with the superintendents. So, and then we also do that through the Office of Tourism as well. I think, Maribel, some other states certainly have some good models.
Yes, absolutely. And we've had the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service come talk to the Confluence of States. As Carolann said, there are some states that have larger masses of public land. So they are really interested in working with states, and these offices make it so much easier for that point of contact. I will also note a lot of these federal agencies like the BLM, I'll drop this in the chat. They're creating these blueprints for outdoor recreation, and it's just been this really interesting to see because of the explosion in outdoor recreation. So they're trying to get their priorities and strategies aligned to meet the demand and to also grow in this space. So definitely an area that they're looking to collaborate with us on, and they keep asking us, okay, what are the new states that are developing offices? So it is definitely a strong point to connect the two together.
Yeah, and I can talk about from a corp perspective, since we don't have an OREC and what we did. So for most people that are on this call, that how much California land is actually federal land. Very little of it is state park land or managed by the state, and we have quite a bit of Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service land, national parks, et cetera. And so during the pandemic, I remember we had Recreate Responsibly California Coalition happen, and that brought together folks like, I saw Ray Murray from National Park Services on this call. We had representatives from the Forest Service, BLM, et cetera, come together, and we had businesses, we had corp like us, we had some other nonprofits on board, and we had weekly updates on what was going on public lands and as far as outdoor recreation and how to tell participants to recreate responsibly and encourage that. And also that came out of that period, I believe there was collaboration around e-bike legislation and policy, and all of the federal agencies were coming out with their basically laws around e-bikes and if they're allowed on trails or not, and that would establish collaboration. So where personally I see and where Corp sees in Office of Outdoor Recreation is helping to bring collaboration together on those issues and continue discussions, maybe have task force related to those. And then because through conversations, I feel like we're able to help collaborate and give input on different policies coming out. And then also the California Natural Resources Agency, I believe, already has task force that do bring together all the public lands agencies together. So, but for different issues. And then we have a question from Chris Shiver. He said, I have started talking with Maribel to bring an Office of Outdoor Recreation to Texas. Any tips or wise words on how we should proceed?
Yes, I just messaged Chris back. So there are efforts in Texas underway. There is this gentleman, Alex Brown, who wrote a white paper on why Texas should have an Office of Outdoor Recreation. So I'm happy to share that with you all. But just connecting folks from within Texas that are interested in developing offices. We're very much supportive of. There's also a number of other states that are looking at developing offices, so we're always here as a resource. I'm happy to share our resources from our website as well. I've shared a lot already on here, but always good to share some stuff from other states.
Great. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. I'll have one question for all of you. What are some words you would leave about the importance of an OREC? We'll start with Doug.
It's a great question. I think for my purposes in pushing forward and trying to advance something in the state of California, it's trying to find and thread that needle between what the differences between an OREC and what it can do and should do in the state of California versus what we are currently doing in this space. And we're really hyper focused. The governor's wife, our first partner, Sybil Newsom, is spending a lot of time in an Outdoors for All project initiative, and it's a terrific thing, but it doesn't really speak to the larger outdoors in California and the opportunities, both economic and the physical mental health side of things for Californians in general. Outdoors for All is really more directed toward youth, disadvantaged youth in the state of California, and trying to find opportunities for them to interact and engage nature-based education here in California. So I'm glad that I took part in this. Carolann's framing of the issue about the importance of an OREC they're good takeaways for me, and something that I will advance through my work, hopefully next year.
Yeah, hopefully. Awesome. Jenny, what about you?
I would just say, I think you want to have a champion and an ally within state government. And that's what I see as the Office of Outdoor Recreation, from the private sector side. You never know like what's gonna come up, what issues are gonna happen. And so to have somebody that again can help navigate, can help with resources potentially, and make connections. It's crucial from the industry perspective to have that person in that office.
Awesome, thanks. Carolann?
So I'm actually stealing this from an old document that the National Park Service did with Oregon State University called Elevating Outdoors Together. But it really is, I think the formation of these offices is a shift in the traditional conversation about outdoor recreation, conservation, and state economies. And I think it just sort of brings together different elements that are sort of been separate into this one place. So that would be my note. I always love that kind of piece inside that document.
Yeah, that's great. And Maribel, this is your life, so your job. I want to know.
Yeah, I think really understanding why outdoor recreation matters, especially to those policymakers and the state, I think is key to the success. I've seen offices get created, Virginia included. We created it under one administration who found importance in different issues. And then this administration that is determining what next steps will be for that office. So just trying to figure out and understand why it matters to the leaders at the big table, and why it would matter to a state, I think is really key. Brad Garman in Michigan loves to tell the story how in Michigan they had an effort to create an Office of Outdoor Recreation, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And it took Carhart tweeting at the governor to say, we want an Office of Outdoor Recreation. And that was the catalyst for creating the office. So you never know. But I think really staying true to what those values are for a state, I think will get you over the finish line.
So you're saying all we have to do is tweet?
If you've got a big influential business or friend of the governor, maybe.
All right, everyone, go on Twitter right now and at Newsom, at California Governor. No, but yeah, we will have opportunities to get involved with advocacy on this in this coming year. I want to give a special thanks to all of our speakers for your expertise and your knowledge and sharing your time with us today. Thank you for joining us. And for those that are not members of California Outdoor Recreation Partnership, you can go onto our website, californiaoutdoor.org/membership, and learn about becoming a member. You're welcome to email me at Lexie at californiaoutdoor.org. I'll put that in the chat. And then as far as this coming year, we will be going after funding in the climate bond, as Doug mentioned, for an Office of Outdoor Recreation, because we feel like funding is obviously a necessary component for this moving forward. And then potentially pursue a bill in the year after. We're not sure quite yet and what exactly that will look like. But this next year is all about awareness and bringing together our large outdoor economy and all participants and workers in that industry together on this issue, and making sure that they're aware California does not have an Office of Outdoor Recreation and what it could do for them, whether they're a guide, business owner, manufacturer, supplier, retailer, et cetera. It can do something for almost everyone in our industry, or I would say actually everyone in this industry. So I hope you'll be on board with our awareness campaign this coming year, and we look forward to working with you on it. So thank you, everyone.
Lexie.
Thanks all.